Alrighty, folks, let's get going here with the afternoon session. It's my pleasure to introduce to the stage Ankit Batwar, Solutions Architect, Amazon Web Service. Ankit has a cross-industry experience advising CIOs and CTO organizations with business transformation using digital solutions and cloud technologies. He's a proven technologist with experience working on international scale and has worked with both high-growth and established organizations. Professionally, he has worked across the technology sector as a sales architect, network engineer, cloud engineer, and adjunct professor of networking and cloud computing for the University of Maryland. Ankit has a Bachelor's of Technology in Electronics and Communication Engineering from Valor Institute of Technology, and went on to earn a Master's in Telecommunications Engineering from the University of Maryland. Please join me in welcoming Ankit to the stage.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Luke. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Virginia Tech and the Center for Business Analytics for providing this amazing forum for these thought-provoking discussions, right? So we have heard from so many different leaders today about different data strategies, about different AI use cases. So glad to be here. My name is Ankit Batwar. I'm a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. If anyone here is not familiar with what Amazon Web Services does, we are a cloud service provider. We essentially provide the building blocks for you to build your systems and solutions in the cloud. So we have various different services that span storage, compute, networking, and other purpose-built services for whether it's AI or DevOps or IoT or mobile applications, whatnot, right? So different set of services. We have looked at various different use cases today, right? So we heard about how AI can solve for corporate strategy, for mission-related goals, for any tasks in general, how it serves different domains that you can work with, and how it can provide efficiency when it comes to working in those different industry domains. What I'm going to talk about here today is building purpose-built AI systems. So it kind of like nicely tees up. We heard a lot of different use cases. Now we'll look at how you can implement some of those use cases, right? And what does it take to implement those use cases? And specifically, because AI is such a broad technology domain, right? Just like any other technology domain, how do you work on building something with a purpose, right? So the way we are going to go about it is we're going to look at 10 different things here. So I've worked in this industry for about 10 years now. And having worked in this industry in those 10 years, I've worked with different organizations of different sizes, different industry domains. And what I've learned from that, my experience has been that to make a system that is successful and that is implemented in a successful manner, it's important that we build it with a certain set of purpose in mind. And with that experience, I've tried to put together these 10 different buckets, to say so. And my aim here is for all of you to kind of like take back with you some of these techniques, methodologies, frameworks, whatnot, to kind of either use it as is or go back and create your own, right? So they're loosely coupled. For the most part, I've put them in this order where you have to look at it in the specific order to essentially get through it in the fastest way possible. That way, your implementation of that production system is done in a smooth manner. The project management becomes easy, the risk management becomes easy, and change management also becomes easy. So we're going to look at all these different things, and we're going to start with, obviously, we're building purpose-built systems, so we're going to start with defining that purpose, right? It's an obvious first step, but I can assure you the numerous times that I've come across different teams or different companies that have built something without having a detailed purpose in mind. And that could be for various different reasons. Sometimes it works out, but for the most part, it does not end up as a successful implementation of a system. So defining the purpose, right? It's a critical first step, which sets that foundation for you to then build on for the next set of 9 steps that we're going to talk about. You have to look at the specific objectives that you have in mind in terms of planning that AI system that you want to build. Right? That specific objective could be a business objective, things like improving sales. It could be a research question that needs answering, right? Things like solving for different climate patterns. Or it could be a societal challenge that you're trying to solve for, right? Maybe things like improving healthcare outcomes. So it can span different domains, obviously, and it can be from these various different types of solutions that you're trying to, or problems that you're trying to solution for. You have to also look for who the intended users are of this system, right? Is this going to be an internal system, or is this going to be an external system? If it's going to be an external system, is it going to be a free system, or if it's going to be a paid system? You have to take all of that into consideration to make sure the kind of the implementation that you're putting together then solves for that, whether it's from an AI model standpoint or whether it's from a infrastructure standpoint. You have to obviously look at the success criteria. You have to come up with metrics that you can track and then measure your implementation against. That way, you can define what a successful implementation looks like. Because without metrics, there's no way to quantify what is success. So you have to look at the metrics as well. And then, apart from the actual the purpose, it's also important to align systems in some cases to your organization's goals. As an example, this could be a sustainability goal, right? So if you have a sustainability goal, then building the same system, as an example, on the cloud or versus on-premise, building it on the cloud can make it more sustainable, and you can achieve your carbon footprint goals. You can reduce those carbon footprint by a much extent when you build something on the cloud, right? So there's numerous white papers out there, numerous studies that have been done where it's proven that building on the cloud helps you with your sustainability goals. And before I move on from this slide, so just as an example in more simple terms, right? There are different kinds of AI systems that you can build. As an example, when it comes to Amazon, right, the e-commerce side, we have our e-commerce, we have Prime Video, we have our drone delivery systems, we have AI in our data centers and in our warehouses, right? So all of those different use cases need different kind of data that the models train from. They need different kind of AI techniques. They need different kind of AI implementations to solve for, right? So all of it is machine learning, all of it is AI, but it's different use cases. The purpose is different. So this next set of steps that you take to implement such systems is going to be different, right? So that's the purpose. The second is to then gather the relevant data, right? Everybody here does something or the other with data, right? So data is really important when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning. The bigger the data set, the more quality the data set has, the more right number of features the data set has, the better your AI implementation is going to be towards the end. So it's a really important step. Generally in an organization, it's a data engineer or a data scientist that works on this step of the system implementation. So you have to identify the data sources, right? So again, it goes back to, from the previous slide, who is this system intended for, right? So if the data sources could be just internal company data sources, it could be external public data sets. It could also be integrations into some third-party systems that you might be tapping into for free, or you could be paying for it. You have to identify all the different data sources that you want to work with, right? You have to also understand how big the data set is going to be, and you have to understand how big each of those specific files or objects in that data set are going to be. That all determines how you're going to do the training, how much infrastructure capacity is needed for training that and for providing the inference. You also have to look at data quality. Not all raw data is going to be in the right state, in the right format, in the right of the right quality to train your model on. So you have to do some form of data wrangling to process that data and get into the right format for your AI models to, the algorithms to train on, right? To create the right set of models. It's a really important step. Again, it's the function of a data scientist or a data engineer to kind of to help with that. In AWS specifically, we have a service called as SageMaker, which has a tool within it called Data Wrangler. So it's a fully managed tool where you can bring in your data sets and then use the internal functions or create your own to wrangle that data into creating the right set of data characteristics that are needed for training the model on. And then obviously data representativeness, you have to make sure the data is complete. It's taking into consideration all the different elements of a certain use case that you're working on. There's no biases in there. All that is important. And then the provenance, right? So you have to make sure and document the origin of that data set and then how it has progressed through that transformation phase to get to that processed qualitative data that you are using to train your models on. It's a really important step in your whole AI system implementation journey. And then leveraging domain expertise, right? So you have to, depending on the use case, whether it's the healthcare use case or a financial industry use case or an e-commerce use case, you have to bring in the right subject matter experts to essentially help you understand if you have the right set of data that you're working on, right? Sometimes this is in the form of interacting, doing interviews with certain subject matter experts or getting your data from the right sources, right? Trusted sources that can provide you with the right set of details around that data set. So that's about gathering your relevant data, prepping it. Again, a really important step in building that purpose-built AI system. Then the next is, once you have your data figured out, you have to now select the appropriate AI techniques, right? So by doing this, you are maximizing the effectiveness and impact of your system that you're building. So what does this mean, right? So you have to first understand what your problem domain is, whether you're doing classification, regression, clustering, generation, what domain that problem statement belongs in, right? Based on that, you're going to evaluate, you're also going to evaluate your data characteristics. So you're going to choose the model. Certain types of models work best with certain kinds of data. So you have different data structures, right? So you have structured data, unstructured data, you have image data, or you have, in general, unstructured data. So what kind of data do you have? Sometimes it is multimodal. So you have to choose the right algorithms, whether it's one or multiple, to build your AI system on. You have to assess the performance requirements, right? You have to explore specialized AI architectures. You may have to look for, if you're doing predictive tasks, then you might have to work with essentially certain kind of models, and then versus if you're doing exploratory analysis or pattern discovery. So there are, again, different use cases and different AI architectures that kind of map to that. And then we all know, we have heard generative AI, the term generative AI today. It's based on large language models. These models are generally very big in size. They are pre-trained. And in some cases, you can use them directly as the foundational model to start from, but then sometimes it also works in your interest if you can start on a domain-specific model that's already been trained to the next level on a certain industry domain or a certain use case that you're trying to target on. So that's another decision point that you have, whether you need to start from the baseline or whether it has to be from a domain-specific baseline. And then leveraging supervised, unsupervised, or a hybrid mix of those approaches, right? So supervised learning generally happens on a labeled data set, and unsupervised learning happens on unlabeled data set, right? So it again depends on what is it that you're trying to do. It works well for one or the other use cases. For predictive tasks, it's good to go with supervised learning methods. For again, those pattern discovery and exploratory analysis tasks, it's good to go with unsupervised learning methods. So that's about selecting your AI techniques. Then the next one is engineering features, right? So we talked about data, we talked about models, but this is feature engineering from that data set, right? So feature engineering is really important. In some cases, it's even more important in terms of boosting the performance when compared to selecting the AI model. So you have a data set, and then you have different features in there, right? So on my first slide, I talked about a healthcare use case. So when you're working through a healthcare use case, let's say you have a big data set, a big patient data set. You're going to have different features or different columns of representative data for different patients, right? In there's going to be age, there's going to be gender, there's going to be maybe some data around what's their blood type, what's their cholesterol levels, and some other vitals. So those are features that already exist in your data, right? So you have to analyze what existing features of your data set are important for your specific use case. And you can do that by using certain different methods like visualizations or feature importance analysis, and just choose what existing features are important to you for your specific use case. If you don't have, in some cases, to make the model training even more effective, it could be beneficial to engineer new features from the existing features. So this could be examples of, like, let's say, a good example, a simple example is if you have, for the patient, if you have their height, weight, and certain other metrics, right, vitals, you can create the BMI function from that. Right? So that's a actual mathematical transformation that you have done on the existing data, which gives you even better understanding of the health of a certain person, right? So that's about engineering new features. So you have to sit down. Generally, again, this is the function of a data scientist or a data engineer to understand from the actual business use case, what is it that we are trying to go for, and then make a decision on whether just use the existing features or create new ones. And in some cases, there's going to be multiple data sources, right? We talked about that. There's going to be multiple data sources. It could be multiple modalities. So you're going to end up with features that are multidimensional. And again, different set of models and algorithms work well with different modalities in that aspect as well. So that is an important step, again, to work on. And it's obviously the last point over here, you have to iterate on it continuously. So you have to go through various experimentations. You have to understand, this is all during the development phase, right? So you are going to go through different iterations of coming to that best point which gives you the right accuracy, latency, efficiency in terms of building that AI system. And then on the AWS side, again, the same Data Wrangler tool that I mentioned before has a feature store capability in there for you to store the features that you create and then keep it versioned in line with the data set that's coming in. So when the data set changes, the features change, they all change together, and that way it's easy to track the lineage of what's being changed over there and the drift. All right, the next one. So far we looked at the purpose, we looked at the data, the models, and the features. Next is now taking all of that and making sure that you are fine-tuning it to an extent where it's now efficient. It's optimized for the use that you want it to be, right? So that's the next step. So this is important as we get to a place where we are putting that system into now into deployment, right? Into a actual production-based deployment where now the system that you have developed is now going to interact with the intended end users that it's supposed to. So a lot of different things here I'll just quickly mention. So there's model optimization, right? So you have to make sure that you're not just using the model as is. Sometimes it works, but in most cases you want to work through it, and you want to reduce the size and complexity to an extent where it is still efficient, but it's also giving you the most optimized, efficient response from an inference standpoint. So there are different methods for doing that. There's model pruning, knowledge distillation, and et cetera. So a lot of different ways that you can do the model optimization. There's hardware acceleration, so you want to make sure for your specific use case whether regular compute is going to be okay, or whether you need GPUs, which is graphics processing unit, or whether you need custom ASICs or FPGAs. So again, for different models, depending on how many parameters there are in that model, the size of the data set that it's interacting with, and also the kind of inputs that it's going to get during the inference time, you want to make sure that you're using the right hardware for that use case. Deployment architecture, you want to make sure when you deploy the system, you want to think through, just like any other IT system, you want to have this on a regular, like a compute instance, or whether you want this on edge computing, distributed processing, or even edge devices, right? So depending on that, or serverless for that matter, that's the deployment architecture. Runtime optimization, just like, again, it's like, you want to think about batching, you want to think about caching, parallelization, to make sure that the system is, again, efficiently optimized during the runtime. And then the last one I'll talk about on this is energy efficiency, which is again interesting. It's depending on what your use case is. If this implementation is going to reside within a traditional compute infrastructure, or if it's going to be something like an Internet of Things or an IoT edge device, or this is a mobile application, right? So your infrastructures are going to have some constraints around energy utilization. So you want to think about that as well when building your systems, because something that can run really efficiently on a large compute resource may not run as effectively on a mobile device. So energy efficiency is something that people overlook quite often, but it's again an important decision factor when you're building your AI systems. Oops. All right, so now we have gotten the system to a point where we know what data we have, we know the models, we have now optimized it. Now we are getting into actually deploying it in a real world, as a real world system. So when you do that, and to provide that consistent performance, ongoing performance, you need to think through some of these other things. If anybody here has already worked on just general IT systems, most of these things are going to be already, you might be already aware of these things. So it's pretty similar. If you think of an AI system, it again is an application of a sort, right? So you are going to deploy an application package onto certain specialized hardware, and you have to take it through the same life cycle as you would, in terms of any IT system. You would have to take it through a comprehensive testing, right? Whether it's unit testing, integration testing, stress testing, or load testing. And then based on that, you want to make sure your fault tolerance has been created in the right way, right? So it could mean you put in the right logging capabilities in there, or the error handling capabilities in there. And also, based on your stress testing results, you want to make sure you put in things like dynamic resource scaling or load balancing to make sure that your system scales as the load on it goes up, right? Handling noisy or incomplete data, because your AI system is going to, so essentially what an AI system does is it takes an input and then gives you an output. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of a data validation methodology in place to handle that noisy data or incomplete data. That way it only processes, because processing can be cost intensive at times. So you want to make sure that you put in data validation mechanisms to make sure that you're taking in the right data. And then, obviously, things like mitigating adversarial attacks, you want to think through, you need to have a security plan that kind of ties into this risk management piece of it. So you want to, just like any other IT system, you want to think through a risk management framework, so you know who the right stakeholders are, what happens during when an event occurs, and what is it, who has what roles, and what needs to be done, right? So you need to have documented paths in place. And then eventually, as the system matures, you can move it from a manual process, which is just a set of instructions. You can also script it and you can automate it to make sure it gets to a place where it's really robust. A secondary blue environment comes up and your main primary green environment goes down. And then you have a sandbox environment in place to kind of understand what is it that went wrong, do that experimentation, and then build that back into your primary environment. So just like providing that robustness and reliability, again, maximizes the user experience, right, of your end users using that AI system. So again, a really important piece. All right, so this is a pretty interesting slide. So embedding domain knowledge, right? So we have talked about subject matter experts. We have talked about getting in the right kind of data. We have talked about just using the right kind of models, right? So what this slide is, let's talk to this slide in context of generative AI, right? Large language models. So large language models are really good at giving you generalized outputs, right? So it does a really good job of whether it's generating content, right from scratch, or you're summarizing something. It does a good job of that. What it is not good at is domain-specific knowledge. It is not good at that. It is not good at knowing your specific organization-specific capabilities as well. Whether it's, for example, if you're a manufacturing company and you manufacture certain products, it won't know the names of those products, right? Those products might mean something to you as the company, but to the large language model, either it'll not know that or it'll take it out of context. So that can create problems when you start looking at these purpose-built systems, right? So as an example, we talked about the healthcare use case, right? So let's look at like an example of like contracts, right? So the large language model will know what a contract is. It knows that it's a legal document. It knows that it's signed between multiple parties, but it will not know what a contract looks like in the healthcare space, in the pharma space, in the e-commerce space, in the financial industry space. And all those contracts are going to look different. They'll have very domain-specific terminology in there. So you do something called as continued pre-training to give the large language model the context around that domain, right? So if you're a company that's operating in the healthcare space, you will take that base model that understands what's contracts, and then you'll train it on the healthcare domain space. So now it understands what contracts in the healthcare domain look like, and what is it. So then you can create an application out of that, whether it's to create contracts or review contracts, right? And the way you do continuous pre-training is through unsupervised learning on unlabeled data, vast sets of unlabeled data. So that way you're able to teach it your specific domain. Now, if you're a specific company that has these specific products or services, as I mentioned before, in that same company, let's say you're creating a contract around a specific product, it will not know the product name. It will not know the other different product names that go along with it. So you're going to fine-tune it with labeled data using supervised learning techniques to then give it that additional knowledge of, okay, now in this healthcare space, this is what my company does, and this is what we do, and these are the different products that we work on, right? So every company has to go through this, every organization has to go through this to get the most relevant outcomes from your purpose-built AI system. And then the last one, retrieval augmented generation. This is really interesting. Again, it's you can do both those things and get the model to a place where it is knowledgeable enough. But if you have data that changes constantly, just because of the nature of it of your business, right? Maybe again going back to that manufacturing example, your parts change quite often. You have different pricing that keeps getting updated. You do retrieval augmented generation as a data source that's up to date on what is it that is needed, what is it that changes for your company every so often. And then the model, when you ask it certain questions or when you're giving it the prompts, it gets augmented with data from that database and then gives you a relevant output that's expected, versus giving you stale output or output that is based on stale data. So that's retrieval augmented generation. All right, next. This is monitoring and updating continuously. So just like with any system, you want to create feedback loops. You want to create mechanisms that allow you to continuously iterate on building those systems. So just like you want to make sure you have performance monitoring built in there to make sure that your model is performing the best way, the infrastructure is performing the best way, and if there is any drift that is detected, then it is, you bring it back to the baseline. And over time, if you think, okay, the certain assumptions or the experimentation that was done initially, maybe things have changed since day one, and you want to make sure that you now adjust the performance based on that. Again, that example that I gave before for one of the services that we have, Amazon SageMaker, that has tools built in to do this in an automated manner for you. We can do versioning and rollbacks. We can do A/B testing. So for your end users, they can test different versions and then go back to or release the next version to everybody at the same time. Instead of doing it at the same time, you do it in an A/B testing manner, test it out, and then see what the feedback has been, and then based on that, then roll it out generally. And then again, compliance and regulation is another space, which is its own thing. Everybody probably here understands some of that. There's a whole big thing. You want to make sure that you are logging for auditing mechanisms to make sure that you are able to provide those artifacts to your compliance and regulatory bodies. All right. Any AI conversation is incomplete without talking about ethics, right? So you have to think through ethical considerations when it comes to building your purpose-built systems, whether it goes to that data and being representative and free of biases. There are again tools within AWS like SageMaker Clarity, which lets you detect bias in your data. And then it's really important to establish that framework, right, around ethics itself. So that's probably, again, a whole slide deck just on ethics that you can go through. But getting the right stakeholders, getting in the room, and getting everybody on the same page in terms of what's ethical from that standpoint for that use case, for that system, and then establishing that framework, and then continuously, again, iterating on that to foster that culture of ethical AI, right? I think it's a very broad domain. Different companies and industries, organizations in various industries can work together on actually creating that framework and creating those bodies to make sure everybody's learning from each other, keep the competition aside for a time being, but then foster that culture of innovation within the ethics space, right? It's a really important consideration that we all need to look through. And then the last one is, which is kind of like tied to the ethics piece. This is the piece that kind of gets you to a place where you're making sure that your AI is explainable. So your system, it starts from understanding what that explainability is, right? So you're making sure that the transparency aspect of it is preserved, right? Companies do this these days using nutrition labels, right? So the labels that we have on our food packaging, which tells you the ingredients and whatnot, what has gone into that food packaging. There are nutrition labels for AI as well. It tells you what was the base model that was used, whether it was retrained or not. If it was, then with what kind of data set it was trained on. So there are different lists that you can put into your nutrition label and make sure that you're creating that transparency for your end users who are using the AI, your system, and not make it a black box, right? And you are doing that for your end users, and as you build your system, you're using those baseline models and you're using certain data sets. It's important that you do your own homework in terms of using the models the right baseline models that have provided you also with that information, and the data sets that have given that provenance information in there. So there are different AI techniques as well that you can employ for providing that explainability as well. All right, and then this is the last slide. So overall, I think the aim for today's session, again, it was for all of you to kind of have this way where you're able to think about that AI system holistically, right? Like, what are the different things that you need to look into? What are the different aspects of the AI system that makes it purpose-built? You have to start with that defined purpose. Data is very critical, so you have to make sure that you have the right kind of data, the quality of that data is maintained, and then you have to have the right stakeholders engaged, right? I have seen multiple times not all the stakeholders engaged in those conversations, the initial conversations of building a system, whether it's as simple as bringing the security team in and getting their input on, this is what we are trying to do. Do you think this is secure, right? So it's, again, really important to get the right stakeholders, the business stakeholders and the technical stakeholders, and also the other stakeholders such as security. And then you have to get to that phase where you're doing the responsible deployment piece, right? So you want to make sure the time and energy. One thing that sets apart AI systems from regular systems is the time it takes to do the training, to clean the data set, right? With a regular application development process, that step is not as cumbersome, but a lot of time goes into, at least in today's date, a lot of time goes into the development phase of your AI system. So you want to make sure that piece of the puzzle is sorted, and you're looking at all the different dimensions to make sure that when you get to the deployment phase, you are able to get to a place where it's being deployed the right way and provides that consistent performance. And then have those feedback loops, whether it's on the infrastructure side or the actual AI model side, whether you're taking that feedback from system metrics or from actual end users, you have to have that feedback loops in place to continuously iterate and make that system better. And then get the expert help when necessary, right? So industry is full of different organizations, different companies doing different things in AI. Everybody has something or the other to contribute to and learn from. So get the expert help necessary. If you at Virginia Tech are looking at building an AI system, come talk to me. I'm going to be in the lobby after this, and we can talk through your use cases, and I can provide insights on that. With that, thank you. Thank you for your time. I hand it back to Jay.